If you are trying to get pregnant, then I am sure the question has crossed your mind a dozen or maybe 1,000 times. How long is this going to take? And I completely get it, because by the time you're ready to start having kids, you're ready to start having kids. You're mentally making that move forward. You already have to wait 10 months for the baby to cook. So adding more time on top of that seems impossible. And while I don't have a crystal ball and can picture or predict the when, where, and how this is going to happen for you, I can take a look at the statistics, the barriers to getting pregnant, and what can lengthen this time so you can fast forward this entire process. Let's get into it. If you're new here, my name is Whitney. I'm a fertility dietitian and coach, and I help busy women like you get out of the Google spiral and get pregnant. As a board certified food and fertility nerd, I've helped hundreds of women figure out their fertility so they can grow the family of their dreams. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing not only the stats of what takes some couples longer to conceive than others, talk about the barriers, and then how you can fast forward this entire process in a 3-phase system. As always, this video is meant for educational purposes only and not meant to be a replacement for medical advice. Let's start out by crunching some numbers first. Now, if you are brand spanking new to the fertility space, you are just learning all the ins and outs of conception. The basics is that there has to be a sperm, there has to be egg. Typically, females ovulate eggs every 24 to 32 days. It ranges for each person, but in general, that's what we look for a healthier ovulation. What that means is that per year, a typical female will ovulate anywhere from 11 to 15 days out of the year, because each ovulation, the egg lasts around 24 hours. So there's 11 to 15 days each year that a woman can conceive. Now, when we break this down into percentages, that means 2 to 3% of the year you can actually even conceive. The entire year, only 2 to 3% of it. Now, if we're gonna break that down even further, a healthy couple with no fertility issues whatsoever has anywhere between a 15 to 30% chance of conceiving on any given cycle. So if we break those numbers down, that means per year, most couples can only conceive 11 to 15 days out of that year. And then within those 11 to 15 days, per one of those days, they have anywhere from a 15 to 30% shot of it actually working. If we break this down even further, if you have longer cycles, let's say instead of between the 24 to 32 day range, you're working with something like a 45 to 50 day range, that 11 to 15 days of opportunity per year will be then decreased to about a week-ish. So you have 7 opportunities per year to conceive versus someone who ovulates more consistently within that 24 to 32 day range, and they're getting 11 to 15 shots per year. If we break it down even further, if you are not ovulating at all, or let's say maybe you ovulate a couple times a year, maybe a couple times a year you get a natural bleed, that means out of an entire year, you maybe have, if you only ovulate twice in a year, that means you only have 2 chances an entire calendar year to actually get pregnant. And in each of those chances, anywhere from a 15 to 30% shot of it working. Now, I'm sure right about now, you're like, "Wait, this sounds terrible. I'm coming out, this video is making me feel worse about my chances of conceiving." And that is not why I'm sharing this. I am sharing this today so that you understand the likelihood each cycle, but also how to practically set up your expectations. If you have totally normal cycles, you're ovulating like a champ every single cycle, at most, you have 15 opportunities to conceive in one calendar year. So if you've been having unprotected sex for a year, while you may have been trying for 365 days mentally, physically, you've only had just over 2 weeks of opportunities. Kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, if your cycles are longer, that means you have had fewer opportunities. And some women only have maybe 7 opportunities per year to get pregnant, which is so few and far between, and it's so frustrating. This is exactly what was happening with my client, Sarah. Now, when Sarah had contacted me, she hadn't had a natural cycle on her own in 2 years. She had been trying to conceive that entire time and had actually been working with her physician, and with the support of medications was able to stimulate an ovulation and bleed, but on her own was not ovulating. And so while she had been trying to conceive the entire time, with stimulated medication cycles, the number of times she was actually able to conceive was somewhere around 3 to 4 times within a 2-year span. So mentally, she was exhausted because she'd been going at this for years, but her body had only had a few opportunities within those 2 years to actually get pregnant. She just didn't have enough opportunities. To be honest, when Sarah hired me, I was a last-ditch effort before IVF. IVF was not a covered benefit for them, and so she wanted to do as much as she possibly could to increase her chances of success naturally, or if she decided to invest in IVF, she wanted to give herself the best shot possible. When we met, we worked through her labs, we looked at her temp charts, we figured out she was not ovulating at all. And so that was our very first stop. If you're trying to get pregnant and you're not ovulating, we got to get that figured out. She was dealing with a condition called PCOS, which anovulatory cycles or lack of ovulation is pretty common with that in some women, not all women, just some women. We really worked hard to balance her insulin levels, her kind of figure out her sex hormone production, because her sex hormone production was quite high, reduce stressors, help with her workload, everything. And within 2 months, her body responded very quickly. Now, I would say most women who have not ovulated naturally in 2 years aren't going to see a cycle show up within 2 months of work. Usually it takes a little bit of time, but her body responded really quickly. She got her first natural cycle in 2 months of working together, and within 4 months she was pregnant with her first baby. And it cracks me up because she actually contacted me to help prepare her for her second baby, but before we even got a chance to work together, she had already started implementing the changes she did the first time around and got pregnant within 2 months again. It was just an amazing story and one of the best reasons not to work with me, right? So if your cycles are inconsistent or they're absent, you absolutely still can get pregnant. It will just lengthen the time to conception because you just don't have as many opportunities each year. If you're trying to maximize your chances of success and fast track this entire conception process, we actually need to give you opportunities. So that means we need to regulate your cycles as our first step. Now, getting your cycles regulated takes a lot more than hopes and dreams, and here are 3 steps to get you headed in the right direction. Step 1, we got to figure out if your cycles are irregular, why that's happening. And it's not so simple. There are a lot of different reasons why your cycle might be irregular. Things that I most commonly see in my line of work are chronic stress, chronic inflammation, autoimmune disease, gut imbalance, nutrient deficiency, insulin resistance. There's a lot of different reasons why this can be happening, and the first step is to figure out why. So how I like to do this is utilizing what I call the body's report cards. So this is lab work. It is bowel habits, it is gut function, it is energy levels, fluid, daily bodily output in fluids, gas, if you're feeling a lot of gas. All of these different signs and symptoms are your body's way of kind of giving us cues on what path we need to follow to get you support, to help figure out where your body is asking for additional resources. Now, I can't go over all of the body's report cards all in one video, but if you want to get started, definitely check out this video where I did my 3 must-check labs. Now, I want to know, if you've been in the conventional fertility space for a while, you might note that this approach to figuring out why you're not ovulating or why your ovulation is stalling out or short or any ovulatory issues, figuring out the root problem is not really the same approach that you're going to find with your conventional doctor. Typically, doctors have the same approach no matter what the issue is. They will prescribe medications to stimulate ovulation and then a monthly bleed, or they will use medications to enhance or magnify your ovulation. I like to start back at square one because depending on what's going on with your system, if you have insulin resistance, that's a different kind of approach to support the body versus if you have thyroid issues. In my world, I try and figure out what's going on so that we can give you not just results while you're taking a prescription, but long-lasting results so that you can take these health benefits throughout the rest of your life. Step 2 would be to create a plan. Now, here is where I would love it. If you have the finances, the mental and emotional resources, I would love it if you could work with a professional on this. It is very nuanced, and I want your energy. If you are the person dealing with the problem and you're trying to get pregnant, I want your energy to be devoted to actually following the plan, not creating the plan. It can take a lot of energy trialing and erroring every single method out there before you find one that works for you. And if you work with a professional like what I do, this can save you a lot of time, money, and energy in the long run. Now, I understand not everybody has the resources to do that. So if you can't, then I recommend checking out this video earlier I did on my 5 pillars of fertility so that you can see the method that I use with my one-to-one clients. And the third step I recommend is to give yourself some time. Monitor for how your body is going to respond and adjust the plan as needed. Now, I know saying give yourself more time is the exact opposite of what this video is meant to do. You're probably sitting there going, wait, you said you were going to fast track this process. And I am, but part of that is being patient. Once you have a plan in place, follow it for a good amount of time to see how your body's responding, and then we can make adjustments. If you're constantly jumping from one intervention, Instagram ads, TikTok shop things, fertility teas, one after the other, it's going to be very hard for your body to keep up, and it can create more chaos instead of fast tracking this process. Patience, unfortunately, and this is coming from the least patient person, is the name of the game. Now, if you are ready to lay some serious groundwork for your 2024 pregnancy, check out the links below and start with the Fertile Kickstarter Guide. This is where I'm sharing my insider tools, tips, and secrets to help elevate your fertility and fast track this entire process. That's all for today, folks. If you are a fellow food and fertility nerd, be sure to comment below and hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.